afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Bayou Bets for Monday, May the 1st. Zach Ewing and Jim Derry with you here. We were with you for hours and hours and hours last weekend in the first few rounds of the draft. And we're back now for a little bit more relaxed atmosphere, Jim, but we're still going to talk draft.
Absolutely. There's a lot to talk about, and seems like that's all anybody wants to talk about right now. So we'll continue on with it, and hopefully we'll be done with it by the end of this week. Praise God, thank God, please God.
Yeah, we won't be done with it, as we'll discuss. You're never totally done looking back at draft classes, but we'll be done for a little while. Let's dive right in. We are brought to you by Caesars Sportsbook. We encourage you all, if you haven't already, go to NOLA.com/Caesars and sign up for an account. They've got a cool bonus bet feature. You go to NOLA.com/Caesars. You're going to get that deal. You get some free Caesars rewards points. You can go use them at Harrah's in New Orleans, or you can go to Vegas and use them. Restaurants, they have all sorts of deals. And you can win a little money. They're going to have NFL schedule release. Lots of cool stuff coming up this month. And after the NFL schedule release, you can go bet on whoever the Saints play first. They'll have a point spread for it. So
you're saying to go whoever the Saints play first, that's who they should go bet on. That's kind of what you just said.
You can go bet on that game.
Oh, okay.
You said you're Derry Downer. Are you picking against him?
You're the one who said you can go bet on whoever the Saints play first. That's a quote.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Well, maybe I'll be right. I got a 50-50 chance. We also encourage you to subscribe to the Bayou Bets YouTube channel. And lots of you hopped on board during the draft. But I'm still seeing like 70% of our viewers are not subscribers on that channel. So come on, get with the program. Hit subscribe. It helps us out. You get alerts when we go live. I'm not saying you got to watch every single show, although we'd appreciate that too. But just hit subscribe and get on the list and join the community. So we are Bayou Bets, and we're going to start, as we do every day, with some headlines. As we roll into sort of the late spring, early summer spot on the sports calendar, college baseball becomes a big deal. We're going to talk about that, but especially in South Louisiana, in Baton Rouge specifically. Number 1 LSU sweeps Alabama. I know you and Gabe Henderson were like watching that over Game 7 yesterday. You guys are like tooth and nails with the LSU baseball team.
Yeah, I mean, like I said yesterday in our little group text, I think that for many LSU fans, you talk about the regular season not mattering all that much. I disagree. I think it matters a whole bunch, especially when you're trying to get seeding. And for LSU fans, I think most of us agree that, and alums alike, the things you look forward to in any season is, if you have a chance to beat up on Alabama and Ole Miss, it's a great year. And the Tigers did that. They're 6-0 against them.
Yeah, and they did a great job. I disagree with you. I mean, LSU's number 1 in the country. They could lose every game they play for the rest of the year, and they'd be like number 8 in the country and still get a number 1 seed in the super regional. And I just don't. Is it meaningful from an emotional standpoint? Okay, but if we're talking about their chances to win a national championship,
we'll get there.
But we'll get there. Meanwhile, at the same time, Steph Curry was scoring 50 points against the Kings. The Warriors win Game 7. LeBron versus Steph. Hey, I understand. I'm with you guys.
We'll
talk more about this too. It's gross.
Not watching.
Nobody wanted Lakers versus Warriors outside of those two fan bases. But these guys are like 35 and 39 or 35 and 38. I think the things that they're doing.
Not going to do it.
This is probably the last chance they go head to head in the playoffs. So should be good. The rest of our headlines, Kentucky Derby draw was this morning. I believe you pronounced that Forte, right? Like
Forte.
The old Tulane running back.
Yeah,
or
Forte.
There's no accent. There should be an accent mark on it. But anyway, Forte is the favorite. He's 3-1. Got the number 13 post. And then the Bruins and the Avalanche bounced in the Stanley Cup playoffs. We don't talk a lot of hockey.
No,
defending champ out.
Yeah, we don't have a segment on this, so I'll just go ahead and say it right now. Put it this way. NHL Game 7s, and I know a lot of people out there don't watch the NHL and blah, 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 and I don't watch it a ton. I used to watch it a lot. I haven't the last 15 years or so. But NHL Game 7s are way better than NBA Game 7s. They just are. The NBA Game 7s get more hype, but NHL Game 7s almost always live up to that hype. And I was watching the damn Kraken and Avalanche last night. Now, granted, there wasn't much else on except bad Houston Astros baseball, but I I turned on the other game 7, the Panthers and Bruins. Crazy finish. I'm glad I turned it on, and then it got me hooked and watched the Kraken and Avalanche, which was a great game. They had a goal wiped off the board. I'm telling you, the NHL is exciting stuff. Even if you don't understand it all that much, it really is exciting and fun to watch, especially a Game 7. Almost every Game 7 I've ever seen in the NHL lives up to the hype.
I mean, you Game 7 overtime, especially that Bruins Panthers overtime, where you're going
any second.
The next goal that is scored, and it could be in 5
over.
seconds or 5 hours. You don't know. It's either going to give the Bruins a second chance at life, because for those who don't know, the Boston Bruins set the NHL record for points, basically the best record in NHL history this year. They were like 65-12. So the next goal is either going to give them a new set at life and continue their march as Stanley Cup favorites, or it's going to make them arguably the biggest choke artists in the history of American sports. Guess what happened? The Florida Panthers scored, and that's what happened. So I do have a rant about this later, but yeah, it was phenomenal. And by the way, the Bruins were up 3-1 in that series, and you could have gotten the Panthers, I believe it's 17-1 to win the series at that point. So
wish I would have.
Yeah, we missed that chance. But anyway, the other headline, of course, the draft. The Saints finished up their draft class, and we ask you a poll question every Monday here on Bayou Bets, and we'll show you the results in Thursday's show live at 4 o'clock. We want to know, what grade do you give the Saints draft? And we put some comments here, but basically it's just your letter grades from school, A, B, C, D, or F. How do you think the Saints did? And with that said, Jim, go to bet.nola.com to vote on that. And then let's talk a little bit about it. Here's their draft class. They got 7 guys. And I'm of the opinion, I give it a solid B. I'm not ready to give it an A. And we'll talk in a minute about how silly giving out draft grades is. But from where I'm sitting, they filled pretty much all their needs. I don't think there's a ton of sexy picks here, but all the boxes kind of got checked by the end of the draft.
I'm not a fan of the first and second picks. I'm not going to go over this ad nauseum again. The first round pick, okay, you think is your most glaring need. And Brian Brzee may be a great pick in the long run, but Isaiah Foskey, I really like what I see about this kid personally. And I think he may be a great player, but I thought that was that was about the 4th or 5th most need on this team. But anyway, I think I'm seeing to be in a minority. That being said, the rest of these picks, I think they're all outstanding. So I would give probably an A to all the other picks, which in the grand scheme of things averages out to probably like a B- is what I would give them. So I'm probably a little further down than you, but I love Condre Miller. I really love the guard from Old Dominion. And Jake Haener, we talked about all these Saints fans wanting to pick Hendon Hooker with a top 40 pick, which was absolutely absurd. The Saints were A, never going to do that, and B, had they done that, you would have had to find someone else to be on the show with you, because I probably would have blown a gasket had they done that. But getting Jake Haener, who is not only is he potentially a solid backup, potentially one of the best backups in the league. I think it was Rick Spielman who compared him to Case Keenum, and I think that's a great comparison. But I think this guy could end up being a starter one day. Now, there's no pressure because he comes here and he can sit behind Derek Carr and for 4 years, which is what you want. And maybe in 4 years or whatever, however Derek Carr works out, this kid could potentially be a starter. So way better than the Ian Book pick. And the last 2 picks, especially A.T. Perry, I think are great for this team as well. I think all 7 of these guys are going to make the team, and I wouldn't be surprised if 4 of them contribute mightily next year.
I mean, the other thing is the Saints have excelled over the years at undrafted free agents. And if you look at some of the guys they signed, I mean, they got a tight end. I'm not going to go through them all, but look, I think some of those guys may make the team as well. And Jerry's here. Welcome, Jerry G. He says an A+. I mean, again,
no way.
We can jump into how silly it is to grade.
We're going to get into that
after. But I do think, I mean, look, you went into the draft saying they got to address the defensive line. They got to get a running back. They got to address the offensive line. They got to get a receiver. They, maybe a backup quarterback type for down the road. They did everything you really needed them to do. And the one place I'll push back, the more I read about Isaiah Foskey, I actually put some. Caesars has him at 60-1 to win Defensive Rookie of the Year.
Go
The
ahead,
guy,
waste your money.
he blocks kicks.
Big deal.
He gets sacks. I mean, you
Ooh.
look, it doesn't take a ton to win Defensive Rookie of the Year. Sauce Gardner won it last year, but if he hadn't, it's probably Aiden Hutchinson, who I think had 8 sacks last year. I think that's in
a little
Foskey's
different.
wheelhouse.
Come on, man. Aiden Hutchinson, Isaiah Foskey. Come on, man. Stop that. Stop.
He's going to have to beat Carl Granderson out for some playing time first. But at 60-1, I think the guy can wreak some havoc. He's going to play some special teams.
Don't get me started again. You're just trying to rile me up.
Maybe.
I mean, come on. The Saints, the defensive end was like way down the list. I don't give a rat's ass what anybody says. It's way down the list. They didn't need a defensive end. Not there. That they'd be better served to do it where they got They don't need a quarterback, but they got a quarterback. They got a really good quarterback, a potential guy who could stay on this team for a long time, and about where the spot where you pick something like that in the 4th round. You don't pick a defensive end when you don't need a defensive end right now. That's a first-round pick for next year, when Cam Jordan is either retiring or very close to retiring. That's not a second-round pick for this year. So we can go back and forth on this all day long. You love the kid, whatever, blah, blah, blah. I mean, this team's not good enough to be picking kids because they love the kid. They obviously pick Brazil because they love the kid. That's fine and dandy. You love the kid. Great. You think that's your greatest need. Fine. I don't agree with you, but okay. But then defensive end. No one can tell me that they couldn't have gone up. They need a wide receiver before they need any of that. Great. A.T. Perry may be good. A 6th-round pick that could come in here and play some. That's wonderful. But you could have gone up and got a real wide receiver that was rated way higher than that and gone up in the 2nd round and got him. Or you could have got a Darnell Washington who slipped and slipped and slipped, who would have been a major contributor to this team. And you trade away Troutman. So I look, we can go back and forth on this all day long. I don't care how well he does next year. Seriously. He can win Defensive Rookie of the Year, which he's not going to. And I would still say it's not the right pick for this team unless they go like 11. If they go 11-6 and go to the playoffs and make moves, and he's great, then maybe I'll reconsider. But I doubt it seriously. Come on, this team has way more needs.
The last thing I'll say about it is, if you don't draft a defensive end relatively high, you go into the season at a position that needs to be heavily rotated, where your 3rd defensive end after Cam Jordan and Carl Granderson is Peyton Turner, who has not shown that he can stay healthy. I mean, they did need a defensive end.
Do it next year.
They did. They needed one this year. They needed a 3rd defensive end. You can't count on Peyton Turner. You could argue whether it should have been 2nd round or 4th round. They needed somebody. So
okay,
all right.
Let's move on.
But let's talk about
completely disagree. It's obvious.
One thing you said, Jim, is you'll change your tune if he has a great year. And well, that's how these things kind of
That's not what I said. That's not what I said at all. I said I might change my tune if they go like 11-6, go to the playoffs, make a serious run. If they go 10-7, get and limp into the playoffs, losing the 1st round, and he had 4 sacks, I'm gonna be like, okay, anybody could have done that. So big deal. I mean, the chances of me changing my opinion on this, I think, are probably 10%. So there you go. That's what I'll say.
That says more about you
me
than
on
anything
that.
else. But
no, it's not saying more about me. It's saying what I'm telling you, giving you my opinion on what I tell you. I think the Saints' needs are. But I mean, this is all part of what's going to be part of my rant in about 20 minutes. So
all right. Well, my point was, when I said that, is that we like to change our tune on these draft picks as the years go on, and that is why some of this stuff is so silly, right? Like and again, you're going to talk more about this later, but we were looking back in our production meeting about last year's draft grades, and the Saints didn't fare too well in these draft grades. And you look back and you go, that was a pretty good draft between Chris Olave and Alontae Taylor, and we'll see what they get from Trevor Penning. It could turn a good draft into a great draft, but it really is silly to sit there and try to grade these things. And I know we're asking you to do it, but
they're all over the board anyway. They're all over the board. So I'm interested to see what the fans think, because I know what I've seen from my group of fans. When I say my group of fans, in my social media circle. So that's what I'm really interested to see. And the ones that I've seen are all over the place. So I think this poll is going to be all over the place. But Saints fans like Jerry, I love you, Jerry, and thank you for for coming on, watching all our shows, including Datitude on Fridays. Saints fans, for the most part, they're either eternal optimists or they're absolute 100% pessimists. There's very few that are in between. There are very few that'll tell you the way that it is. So I don't expect
Where's our boy Kyle at? I'll bet you gave it an A.
I don't expect a lot of C's. I expect a lot of A's. I expect and a mix of D's and F's. But that's what I expect.
I did find this pretty funny. I was going back because I'm of the opinion that you almost can't even grade last year's draft yet. Like Trevor Penning and how he turns out is going to be a big, because they gave up a lot to get that second first round pick. They gave up what ended up being the number 10 pick this year. So for that to be a good draft, like he's really going to have to hit. So I went back 3 years to the 2020 draft, the remote one, the weird one, that we all like probably set viewership records because we had literally no other sports.
Which is, by the way, arbitrary.
It is. But I went, 3 years is it's arbitrary, but it's also okay. That's enough to kind of have an idea of how these guys panned out. And NFL.com did rankings of the 32 draft classes from that year. They gave the Philadelphia Eagles the 26th best draft class out of 32 teams. Well, all they did was draft Jalen Hurts in the second round that year. Jalen Reagor was their first round pick. Okay, he hasn't really hit, but Kavon Wallace has been a starter for their defense. Quez Watkins has been a starter. But the big one, of course, is Jalen Hurts. Okay, moving on. Then the number 32 draft, very last in the NFL, the worst draft in the NFL was the Green Bay Packers, who drafted Jordan Love, who's going to start a quarterback for him this year. They drafted A.J. Dillon, who's turned into a pretty good running back. They drafted John Runyon, who's been a starting guard.
Starting guard,
That's
definitely not 32.
Come on. I'm not, and Jordan Love, number 25 was the LA Chargers, who drafted Justin Herbert, number 6. That's a pretty good pick. And the Saints that year were number 17, so they were kind of middle of the pack. They got a B. This was the Saints draft class from 2020. Cesar Ruiz, who, by the way, news today, they declined his option. He's been okay, but not good enough to get the fifth-year option.
That was an awful pick.
It didn't have a second-round pick. Third-round pick was Zach Bond, who has not been very good. And then they traded up basically the rest of their picks to get Adam Troutman, who they just traded to the Denver Broncos. So that's
way worse than the Packers.
That's a D. I mean, it wasn't a complete disaster because at least you've gotten some production out of Cesar Ruiz.
There's a draft that I didn't change my opinion on because I said it sucked then, and it really does suck. I didn't realize how bad it sucked till you just read it out to me.
I mean, they traded their last 4 picks to get Adam Troutman. Then they traded the following year's 7th round pick to get back into the 7th round to take, if you remember this name, out of Mississippi State, quarterback Tommy Stevens, who never made the active roster and is now playing the CFL. So, you gave up 5 picks to get Adam Troutman and Tommy Stevens.
And then Peyton gave picks back to get Troutman again. So I don't know what his love affair with Troutman is. And look, I still think Troutman has potential. I think he's going to be okay if he can stay on the field and learn how to catch the football. Those are 2 big things, by the way. But I don't know what his love affair is with Adam Troutman, but we're going to find out, I guess. Russell Wilson.
I would have certainly taken the Packers number 32 draft over the Saints number 17 draft.
Unquestionable. But I remember, look, we talked about during the draft show with Cesar Ruiz. Jeff Duncan was telling me that they didn't want to draft necessarily. They didn't necessarily want to draft Cesar Ruiz. They had I can't remember who it is now, but whoever they wanted to pick someone at that spot. Tried to trade up, couldn't trade. I'm like, okay, he's going to fall down to us. And then he didn't. And somebody snaked them right before they were supposed to draft. And they didn't know what to do. They tried to trade down. No one wanted to trade with them. So they just kind of I think, picked a name out of the hat.
They picked a guy with a 2nd round grade in the 1st round.
Exactly. Every team does it. Every team panics. And I think that was a panic pick right there, as was. And it ended up being okay. I know people hate this guy, but Andrus Peat was the same kind of thing. They wanted Brandon Scherf. They were planning on picking him, and he got snaked right before they picked. And so they were kind of in a tizzy, didn't know what to do. Peyton had a long relationship with David Shaw. They went out and got the Stanford lineman. I think he was a tackle at the time who turned into a guard. And Andrus Peat has turned into, you may not like Andrus Peat, but considering he's been on this team for 7 years and has been a starter when healthy throughout that time and has done a decent job when on the field, you have to say, for the most part, the pick worked out. So now
he was a starter on some good offenses.
Absolutely.
I mean, he really was. Yeah.
Now the second pick, they had 2 first-round picks that year. The second one was Stephon Anthony. That one didn't work out so well. That was a bad pick. But it just goes to show, no matter how good teams are, I think every team at some point panics a little bit. And you're like, oh, God, we got snaked. What do we do now? Oh, no one wants to trade with us. The clock's at at 45 seconds. You saw the Vikings, was it last year, when they ran out of time and it got passed over?
I think
was that last year or the year before
that.
all of that?
Yeah.
Oh, whatever. But you see every team panic, and, at least the Saints didn't do that. So, whatever.
It was 2003, Jim.
No, that was like
there was all sorts of
2 years
year
ago.
anniversary stories written about it this year. Unless you're talking about something
that's
else.
happened recently. It happened recently.
Well, hey, the point is these names at the bottom of your screen, like
Everybody panics.
we don't. There's probably a couple of these names that in 3 years you're not going to remember. You're who? But there's also
Exactly.
a couple of those guys. If things go well, 3, 4, 5 of those guys, you're going to say,
Right.
oh, they all turned into starters. That was a good draft. And that's not just the Saints, right? Like the Saints are in a division that is basically everybody's rebuilding. And that's kind of where we're going to go next, is how did everybody else do? And again, it's really too early to say. But if you look at the NFC South, let's look at the NFC South odds. The odds did not change at all. Everybody knew the Panthers were taking Bryce Young. These odds did not move one dime on Caesar Sportsbook from this draft because, there wasn't a draft pick out there other than Bryce Young, who everybody knew Carolina was going to take, that's going to shift the paradigm of this division dramatically right now.
Well, before we move on, I do want to say one thing. I saw a bunch of people, all Facebook acquaintances, let's put it that way, who were bitching about Nick Saldiveri making that pick instead of taking Osiris Torrance. And that's the kind of thing that just goes to show, because he went to Old Dominion and one went to Florida, doesn't mean jack. Now, I don't know which one's going to be better. I mean, I like the Saldiveri pick. I mean, the dude's huge, and everything I've seen on him shows that he's definitely a great pick for that. Could be your starting guard next year in the third or fourth round, fourth round. And so, but people are complaining, oh, they could have gone and got why is the Florida guy going to be better? Because he went to Florida? I mean, that's the kind of stuff that goes into my whole rant that's coming up in a little bit. But you don't know. You can't compare those two right now. The Saints saw something in this kid, and they've been scouting him. And when you go and hear what he had to say, the Saints had been talking to him in the Senior Bowl and had talked to him multiple times before the draft. They kind of thought he was going to get picked by the Saints.
I mean, the other thing is Osiris Torrance went at number 59 overall. In order to pick him, the Saints either would have had to use their number 40 pick on him, or they would have had to give up a lot more to get back up, or they don't get Kendry Miller. I mean, it's not a one-for-one comparison to say, oh, I would have rather 100%. Had Torrance than Saldiveri. It's not. That doesn't work that way.
You try to explain that, but that doesn't. Yeah. They don't understand common sense.
Yeah, I mean, he probably did, but that doesn't mean Saldiveri. I mean, look.
I can't read that. What does that say? I'm sorry, I don't have my glasses on.
It means he blocked better players. How many Jalen Carters in ODU's conference? I would say
that doesn't make a difference.
Teron Armstead is probably the Saints' best offensive line draft pick over the last 15 years, and he played at Arkansas Pine Bluff.
Exactly.
Which, by the way, one of their undrafted free agents came from Arkansas Pine Bluff this weekend on the offensive line. Thought that was interesting.
I don't think arguably. I think he clearly is the best Saints offensive lineman that they've drafted in the last at least 12, 13 years. I don't want to go too far back because that.
That's why I said 15. I didn't want to go back before I could remember, but
for sure though.
These guys come from all over the place.
Well, I mean, you draft a wide receiver in the 7th round and Marcus Colston, and he ends up being arguably the best receiver in franchise history. I mean, so you just don't know.
Sure.
Tom Brady, 6th round draft pick. I mean, give me a break. I don't care if they went to Old Dominion, they went to North Dakota State, they went to some school you never heard of, or they went to LSU. And all this stuff of, the Saints just don't want to draft LSU players. I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, they draft who they think fits in here. They were arguing about Foskey, and they were saying they should have taken B.J. Ojulari. I mean, why? First of all, they shouldn't have. I'm not going to go into this whole spiel again, but they shouldn't have drafted that position anyway. But that doesn't mean that Isaiah Foskey isn't better or equal to BJ Ojulari. Has a different skill set. First off,
All right, one more thing before we go into sort of the bigger landscape. Does Jake Haener start a game at quarterback for the Saints? Yes or no?
Ever?
Oh
yeah. I mean, there's gonna be a game where somebody's hurt, and I mean, will he ever be a starting quarterback going into the season? I think it's probably less than 50-50, but there's a decent chance. You're gonna have to read that.
Data Saint says the draft was a home run. In his opinion,
there you go, an eternal optimist.
Look, I think there's a lot of things to like about it. I'm going to stop short of home run. But the Saints are the favorites. Let's go bigger picture here.
It was a blooping single to left that dropped right over the shortstop's head.
I'll take it. It's a line drive in the scoreboard.
There you go. It wasn't an
out. But where I really want to go with this, as we look at how odds have not changed, the rest of the news from draft week, not to say the draft is not hugely significant and will be hugely significant, but it's so unknown. What we do know is that Aaron Rodgers went to the Jets. Lamar Jackson re-signed with the Ravens. The AFC, like the rich got richer, right? The Philadelphia Eagles apparently had a very good draft. We think they did. Again, we're not sure.
Yeah, they had a pretty good draft.
Yeah, I mean, they certainly got good value on guys compared to where they were. But I want to take a look at these NFC odds, because one thing struck me as I'm looking at these post-draft. The Saints are the 5th choice in the NFC. They are, according to the odds, now 14-1 is sort of a long shot, but legitimate contenders to at least go deep into the playoffs against a fairly weak NFC field.
Well, that's simply because they're probably going to, I mean, they think they're going to win the division. I mean, they're the favorites to win the division. So, I mean, you automatically get a leg up in the odds when that happens. But there's a big difference between them. The Cowboys are less than half of their odds, or, you know, so, I mean, there's a big drop off after you get past the Cowboys. And for rightfully so, I find it interesting that I thought Philadelphia was probably a better team than San Francisco before the draft. And certainly after the draft with what the Eagles have done, I'm surprised that didn't change. And the Lions at plus 1,000 is absurd. To say that they're the best team in the NFC North is incredibly absurd. I mean, everybody just going to shoo off the Packers already and forget about the Vikings. I mean, I'll take the Vikings and or the Packers before I'll take the Lions. I don't understand why everybody thinks they're so much better. They traded away their 2 running backs and went and made a pick for a running back in the first round when they already had one. You think I'm pissed about Foskey? If I were a Lions fan, I'd have really been pissed off about Jahmyr Gibbs.
They did pick. I actually think they had a good second day of the draft. Brian Branch and Hendon Hooker. But okay, here's my thing with the Lions.
Goff sucks.
At these odds, I'd certainly rather take the Vikings at 16-1, Packers at 22-1. I don't think it's wrong to say the Lions are the NFC North favorites, but I do think it's wrong to say, okay, they're the favorite in a tougher division than the Saints. The Saints are more of a favorite probably in their division. Why do the Saints have longer odds than the Lions to win the NFC? Like, I'd actually probably put the Saints 4th in this list.
I would pick those I would definitely pick the Saints before the Lions. Absolutely.
But I think you could argue the Saints should be the team at 10-1.
I absolutely think the Saints are going to be a better pick than the Cowboys. You can't bet them at 650 because they're in the same division with the Eagles, and I think the Giants are going to be better, and they were good last year. So, I mean, I actually think the Commanders might be a little bit better. So, the NFC East is rough. Why do we have to play the NFC East this year? It's tough. So, I don't know. I don't get some of those odds, but I don't have to because I'm not betting them yet. I'm going to wait until we start doing our over-unders later in the East in a couple months. It's only a couple months away.
Mid-July, we'll start that. Yeah.
2 months away.
In the meantime, we're going to move on this time of year and talk some college baseball. And I think you mentioned it at the top of the show, LSU sweeping Alabama. Okay, Alabama was 9-9 in the SEC. Anytime LSU can hold one over on Alabama in any sport, Tiger fans are going to love that. It did make them more solid championship favorites. They're now less than half the odds of any other team in the market today, plus 420 to win that championship. Again, college baseball is an enormous crapshoot. Yeah. It's an enormous crapshoot. You get into the regional and you have a bad weekend. Let's say Paul Skeens, as great as he's been, if he has a bad day at the wrong time, all of a sudden they're facing elimination and they don't have a lot of pitching depth.
And he hasn't been as good the past few weeks as he was in the beginning of the season. So, look, you might as well go throw the top 15 odds names in a hat if you want to bet on one and pick one out, because you got as much chance of getting that right as you do of saying, oh, I think so-and-so is going to win. And you can't bet on be the biggest LSU homer you want. You can't bet on LSU at 425 or 450 or whatever the hell it was. You just can't bet on that. I mean, that's not bettable. They're not that much better than everybody else. It's really tight this year. And LSU, their lack of pitching depth in the bullpen is going to hurt them when they go further and have to play for, in the SEC tournament, I certainly wouldn't make them the favorite in the SEC tournament, because I think that bullpen's going to get knocked around in the tournament. Now, they actually may be better off when they get to regionals and then College World Series, because you don't have to pitch as much. But, man, I don't like their chances in the SEC tournament at all.
I was just about to say I would bet on them to win the national championship before I bet on them to win the SEC tournament.
100%.
I do find this interesting, and I want to give credit to Todd Politz from LSU Athletic. I think he's a content manager at LSU Athletics. He posted this morning. LSU has scored more runs through 43 games. They've scored 430 runs in 43 games, so 10 per game on the dot. That is more at the same point in the season than any of the Gorilla Ball teams.
I was going to say more than Gorilla Ball. It's a lot.
Yeah, it's 4 more than the 97 team, which has the second most, 12 more than 96, 22 more than 2000, and way more than 98 and 99. So this offense is spectacular. Well, now, having said that, they're actually only second in the nation in runs scored. Wake Forest, who's the number 2 team in the country, Wake Forest, if you look at some of their scores, like, they are pounding
the ACC.
ACC is not as good as the SEC. It's okay.
It's okay. But, the thing that's impressive about LSU is if you look at their averages in power, it's spread across everybody talks about Dylan Cruz, but he's only got 13. If you look at the entire team, it's spread across lineups from 1 to 9. Even Milazzo had some big hits yesterday. All of them hit. They all hit. I think Kay Beloso's got, I think he's got 10 home runs or something along those lines. So, you look at them from 1 to 9, they all hit. It's not like some of those other Gorilla Ball teams where you got 3, 4, and 5, and you hoped you could, get there. We've had Mikey Matok on this show before, and maybe we ought to bring him back on and talk to him. But that's the difference, I think, between this LSU team and some of those Gorilla Ball teams that you had a 30-run home run hitter. That's the difference.
I want to correct something too. Wake Forest is up there in runs per game, but they've had a bunch of rainouts. It's actually Florida Gulf Coast in pure runs that is higher than LSU. They're number 2 in the nation with 430. So, this offense
I want to play them
for real. And I will say, LSU and Wake Forest would be a hell of a fun matchup in Omaha if we got that far, because those two offenses in a ballpark that suppresses offense, the new TD Ameritrade ballpark in Omaha.
How about LSU in South Carolina?
Yes, well, that would be good too. They split their season series 1-1 because of a rainout. And El Rey has to bring this up. Missouri baseball, like.
Wait, put that back on. You turned it off already. Why?
I turned it off quickly. I'm not so sure that.
Oh no, that's not fair.
Like, should Missouri disband the program? That's a spot for another show.
That's not fair.
They maybe should. Florida's up there too. We can look at these odds one more time. Florida's 4th choice there. South Carolina, Wake Forest at 9-1. Florida 10-1. And look at the SEC. That's another reason why winning the national tournament is going to be easier. The SEC tournament, you're going to run into a top 10 team in every single round, starting with the second round. In the national tournament, you won't do that.
Right. It's tougher to win the SEC tournament than it is to win the national championship.
There's no question about it. Well,
I think the College World Series is going to be a mini SEC tournament anyway. There'll probably be 4 SEC teams in there.
Probably will. So. All right, we're going to wrap things up with tonight's NBA playoff picks and look at some series prices as well. What do you like tonight, Jim? Oh, come on. No Joel Embiid for the 76ers, or he's doubtful, I guess. So the Celtics big favorites.
I like the Nuggets. How about
that? I'm rooting for the Nuggets point blank. I'll just be honest with everybody. They're like the most likable team left by tenfold.
There really isn't a team that I mean, I'm rooting for the Nuggets and the Heat. I know it's not going to happen, but that would be phenomenal. I'm not joking. I don't think I can watch Lakers Warriors. I think I'm gonna. I haven't caught up on. It's been a while since I've watched Apple TV or the series that I was watching that I kind of like laid off. And
Ted Lasso, you Ted Lasso guy?
Yeah, but I'm not quite caught up. I'm about midway through this season, so I got to get caught up on that too.
Yeah. No spoilers.
Yeah, please. But so I got to get caught up in that. I'm watching another show called Shrinkage, I think, or Shrinked or whatever.
That's supposed to, I want to watch that too. That's supposed to be
I've been watching. It's pretty funny. But so there's some shows I want to catch up on. I think when the Lakers and Warriors, it's perfect time. By the way, if you've missed it, I've been watching the USFL and it's been fun. So I stayed up late last night watching because I didn't get to see it. The Pittsburgh Maulers, who hadn't scored an offensive touchdown all year, their defense is solid, and they beat the
watched
Philadelphia
USFL
Stars
on replay?
On replay,
get this man some help.
At 1 a.m, baby.
You need pills or something, man.
Great.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Awesome.
Series prices. We looked at Nuggets. The Nuggets have a 1-0 lead. The Heat have a 1-0 lead on the Knicks. Okay. Look, I'm going to say two things, and one is that LeBron versus Steph. Believe me, it makes me want to vomit in my mouth too. But it's like history, man. I mean, these guys, Steph Curry scored 50 points in Game 7. And LeBron doing what he's doing at age 38. Like, something's got to give. It's going to be fun. I like the Nuggets over either team in the conference finals. Not sure about the Suns. The Suns are soft, man. I just think – I don't think the Suns can get through. The other thing I was going to say is there value? And I know Joel Embiid probably not going to play tonight, but he may be back Wednesday. 76ers 4-1 to win that series. That's a pretty high price.
Yeah, I'm not betting against Celtics. Sorry.
I mean, I already have 6-1 on the Celtics to win the title, so it'd be a little bit of a mini hedge for me.
Yeah, if I were you, maybe. But I still like. Nobody wants to give the Heat a chance, and I don't want to wait to see how much Jimmy Butler's ankle was messed up. Have you seen an update on it? I have not seen an update on it yet.
I haven't either.
A shame seeing that because I really, really, really like him. And I like the Heat, and I like their moxie, and that's who I'd want to root for. Heat Nuggets. I'm probably the only one only one around rooting for Heat and Nuggets, just because I hate the obvious. I just do. I'm not joking when I tell you I don't think I can watch Warriors like I can't listen to it. I can't listen to them oogle over these stars. It is making me sick.
I will agree with that. That part.
That should be my rant
watch the games.
Today.
But I might have them on mute or real low volume and just watch and see what happens instead of listening to the.
I don't remember what game it was, but it was Grizzlies and Lakers. Which one? I don't remember which one of the games. It was one of the ones the Grizzlies won. But the Lakers were doing nothing for a little while. The Grizzlies hit like 3 threes in a row, and Mark Jones is like completely monotone every time they hit a three. LeBron comes down the floor, hadn't done jack for like 6 minutes, and hits like a 16-footer, and Mark Jones acts like it was a winning shot in Game 7. I can't listen to this. It's disgusting. And I get it. It's all because of ratings, and they want people to watch, and they want people to keep on the LeBron talk and the Steph Curry talk and all this. I don't want to be a part of it. I just don't. I don't think it's worth watching, and they got what they wanted, but I didn't get what I wanted, so I'm going to take my ball and go home.
All right, well, that was a mini rant. Let's do some full-size rants. And I'm going to go back to the NHL. We talked about at the top of the show, the Boston Bruins losing to the Panthers. It was dramatic. I'll give you that. You're right. I mean, it was like I care nothing. I think I had like $5 on the Bruins to win the Stanley Cup at 5-1 or something. So, but it was the first round. Like I was on the edge of my seat. Didn't really have a dog in the fight, but my kids who never watch hockey, they were on the edge of their seat. I told my wife the situation. She's on the edge of her seat. Like, there's no doubt it's dramatic. But, like, there's still some part of me that says, did the Boston Bruins really deserve this? Because now we're calling them chokers after one of the great seasons in NHL history.
They are.
And we do the same thing. The Golden State Warriors, who chased history in 2017 and went 73-9. And then they get to Game 7 of the NBA Finals. And LeBron James and Kyrie Irving, great performance, great game. The Cavs come out on top by 2 points. And we call the Warriors, chokers. Nobody should ever go for 73 wins. Chokers. We do the same thing in baseball. The LA Dodgers win 105, 110 games every year. They lose in the playoffs. They're chokers. We let half the teams in any given sport into the championship, into the playoffs, and then we call them chokers. If things, the Milwaukee Bucks this year, same thing. Giannis gets asked if the season was a failure. Well, by any objective measure, their season was a failure because they wanted to win an NBA title, right? Nobody had them going out in the first round, but they won 58 games. How is that a failure? So to me, I just think we need to look in the mirror, and it's not changing. It's not changing because the playoff games are where the money is in TV and the money is at the gate. But we need to look ourselves in the mirror and say, is this really how we want this to be? That nobody is going to care about these sports until the playoffs start?
Here's the problem with your premise, because I agree with your premise, but the problem is this is what Joe Q numbnuts wants. I mean, it simply is. They will watch during the regular season in these sports in the NBA and Major League Baseball, and then they will watch in the playoffs like it really matters. Okay, now it really counts. So basically you're watching a 6-month glorified preseason, but that's what it is. And in the grand scheme of things, and if you suck bad enough not to make the playoffs, you didn't deserve to make it anyway, so the preseason didn't really matter. But I agree with you wholeheartedly, but like you said, it's not going to change because this is where we've come. It's all about TV, and this is what TV wants. And in the grand scheme of things, you're talking about youngsters, most of them, who don't know any better, and this is kind of what they know now, and they want more teams in the playoffs. If it were up to like some 23-year-old, you'd probably have every team in the playoffs. Then the regular season
play a
really,
tournament.
Yeah, exactly. It'd be a 82-game tournament during the regular season.
I will say this one possible solution, and it'll never ever happen. Don't get me wrong. It's not a workable solution just because of the way ownership situations are set up. But promotion relegation, like they have in European soccer games, it would change things.
Can you imagine that in football?
Oh, there was an English Premier League game that just ended this afternoon. It was Leicester City against Everton. And they're like number 16 and 18 in the standings. There's 20 teams in the Premier League, so they're bottom of the barrel. It's one of the biggest games of the season.
Australian rules football the same way.
One of those teams is going to survive to play with the big boys next year, and the other one probably isn't. So it's a huge thing. I don't know. Instead, we get baseball teams. The AL Central average team in the AL Central is on pace to finish 63 and 99.
Yeah.
In the whole division, because the Royals don't want to win. The White Sox are getting to the point where they're going to sell everybody off. Like, these teams don't want to, unless you think you can get into the playoffs, you go the opposite direction. Well,
I think the rule should be if you can't win at least 55% of your games, and maybe that's a little high, let's say 53. If you don't have at least a .530 winning percentage, you don't get in the playoffs. So you don't know what the format's going to be until the end of the season. You have to have at least a .530 winning, unless you win your division. You have to have a .530 winning percentage to get in the playoffs. Otherwise, you're not in. How about that?
We're yelling at clouds. Yeah, we're yelling at clouds because it's not going to happen. But part of me loves the excitement of the Boston Bruins getting eliminated. Part of me is like, I know we're selling hope, and the Florida Panthers were okay this season, but they could always hope that they could knock off the mighty Bruins, and they did it, and it's great for their fan base, and it keeps us on the edge of our seat. But part of me is just like, people talk about how they hate participation trophies, and that's a whole nother argument. Like, if you give my 7-year-old a participation trophy and he comes home with a smile on his face, I'm fine with that. I don't think that's a problem. Participation trophies are letting these teams get into the playoffs with a 500 record. That's a freaking participation trophy. And then they knock off the Bruins.
Uh-oh. I think Zach may have locked up. I was going to say I've looked at life from both sides now. All right, how do I do this? Am I going to be able to pull this off by myself? I'm getting a little nervous. Zach's not here. How am I going to do this? All right.
I'm back.
There you are. I was going to say I was about to click on my rant thing and start going off. So we might as well move on. You missed my Judy Collins reference of the afternoon. I've looked at life from both sides now, and all I see is clouds. But anyway, all right. This is my rant of the day, and it's really one of my rants in general when it comes to sports. Okay, I think the NFL draft is the most overrated, just over the top, overhyped, ridiculous, talked about thing there is in sports. I'm not exaggerating. And I know that a lot of my friends love it, and I know that a lot of you love it, and that's fine and dandy, and you sit there and you wait for it to come on and all this blah, blah. But what does it really mean in the grand scheme of things? It means almost nothing, because people want to give their grades. They want to give their mock drafts for 2 months before, and then they want to give their grades for 2 weeks after. And actually, I'm in the middle of and about to make a post because I've been actually asked to, not because I want to, but of the grades from all these media personalities and media entities. And in the grand scheme of things, who cares? The only thing that matters is how these players do when they actually get on the field. Do we know if Brian Brisset is going to be any good? No, we think he's going to be good. He's a first-round pick. We hope he's good, but we hoped Peyton Turner would be good. We hoped Mr. Cesar Ruiz would be good. Some people think he's good, but whatever. You get what I'm talking about. I mean, Stephon Anthony, we talked about him, the 2015 first round. Who is Stephon Anthony? Exactly. The point is, we don't know whether these dudes are going to be any good. I could look like a complete moron for bashing the Isaiah Foskey pick, but that's what I'm contracted to do, and give you my opinion. And so the point is that all these opinions don't matter. And we were talking in our pre-production meeting about some of these past, like just for instance, let's go through some of and very quickly, some of the draft grades just from the first round of last year's draft, right after the draft was over. The Chicago Bears, by NFL.com, got a first-round grade of A. They didn't make a draft pick. However, they traded that draft pick to get Justin Fields. Some of you say, okay, well, that seems like it's worth it. What about the Denver Broncos? They got a grade of A. They didn't make a first-round pick because they used their first-round pick to pick Russell Wilson. That didn't work out very well. So we're giving A's to these teams. The Detroit Lions actually they got an A-. I mean, Aiden Hutchinson by himself is arguably, now Jameson Williams, he got hurt, and now he's gambling like a moron, and so we don't know how good he's going to be. But going down the list and some of these picks, I mean, some of these names I throw out at you, and you might not even know who they are. I mean, the Jaguars, now they got a B+ for picking Trayvon Walker and Devin Lloyd. If that's not an A, I don't know what the hell is. I mean, now we go back to what Zach talked about. It's hard to determine a draft in the grand scheme of things before like 3, 4, 5 years down the road. But it's aggravating. It's annoying for all this analysis that we have to go through and endure. Even my friends, we talk about our poll question today. What grade would you give the Saints? I guarantee you, if you went through my Facebook list, you'd get at least 10 A's, 10 B's, 10 C's, 10 D's, and 10 F's. So what do the grades mean? Absolutely zilch.
No doubt about it. And I laugh because even some of those guys who we knew about, like we knew who Russell Wilson was, so you're still giving the Broncos an A, and yet and that turned out to be wrong, and yet people are giving grades for players they've never seen play before
or heard.
No one's ever seen Nick Salvadori play before.
That's
Nobody
right.
had ever even heard of him.
He's a bum. He's a bum.
Before Saturday, and now he's a bum. He might be the next Teron Armstead. You don't know. Probably
might be the next Jari
maybe.
Evans, by the way, who went to Bloomsburg College. It was the starting guard on this Saints team in the Super Bowl and was a starting guard here for, 9, 10, 11 years. And no one had heard of Bloomsburg College, I promise you, before Jari Evans played for the Saints.
They've actually had a lot of success with offensive linemen from small schools, so you
Absolutely,
never know. But that's going to do it for us, and we probably will revisit the NFL next week when we get a schedule. But it's kind of it's the slow month for the NFL until we get into mini camps and things like that, and I'm sure we'll talk about it. But in the meantime, and by the way, here's your Saints opponents. We haven't showed this yet. This is who they're getting. We just don't know the order. We'll figure that out next Thursday.
Some good quarterbacks on that list, Paul.
Yeah. There's not a lot. Who's the best quarterback they're going to face? Is Bryce Young the best quarterback they'll face? I guess Matthew Stafford.
I mean, you can make an argument for Justin Fields, maybe. I don't know. That's pretty bad.
If Matt Stafford plays, he's certainly the most accomplished.
Kirk Cousins?
I mean, really, Bryce Young, Matt Stafford, Kirk Cousins.
That's about it.
Fields, Jared Goff, Trevor Lawrence. Okay,
come on, he's a bum.
But you're talking about some not great teams. So, Jared, we appreciate it. We will talk NBA playoffs the rest of the way. College baseball, Kentucky Derby on Thursday. We got plenty to talk about, even if the NFL is in its slow period. We appreciate each and every one of you watching. Subscribe to the Bayou Bets YouTube channel. Check out Caesars Sportsbook if you are so inclined and haven't already. Go to NOLA.com/Caesars for our special offer. And we will see you Thursday live at 4 o'clock. For Jim Derry, I'm Zach Ewing. Thanks for watching Bayou.